Radio News, 97.3 FM.
The state ban on bump stocks has passed in the Senate, a step dreaded by gun rights advocates and Senator Mike Schessler, who says the bill goes too far.
Clearly, this is the first gun seizure in the state of Washington.
Bump stocks are items used to modify semi-automatic rifles to increase the firing speed. It was used in Las Vegas by the gunman who killed 58 people and injured hundreds more. Last night, 4 Senate Republicans joined Democrats to pass the measure. It now goes on to the state house. The annual homeless count got underway overnight. Cairo 7's Petrania Punsuwan is in Pierce County for the count there.
And to give you some perspective, the homeless number from Pierce County last year was around 1,300. That actually came down from 1,700 the year before. But volunteers told me this morning, don't be surprised if the number triple or even quadruple because of the new technology and because that they're doing this earlier in the day.
That new technology, a mobile app, is being used by volunteers doing the count. Microsoft employees faced another round of layoffs. The company told the Puget Sound Journal they laid off workers but didn't say how many. Last summer, Microsoft cut thousands of jobs, including 500 in just our region. If you plan to hit the slopes at the summit at Snoqualmie this weekend, bring your own water. Yesterday, the resort was closed due to a failure of its water pumps during a power outage. Everything is back open and running there, but the water is not drinkable yet. So it's BYOW this weekend.
Any of the weekenders that are going to come up this weekend or skiers, we ask that you, please bring your own bottled water.
This order could extend for a week or two as Snoqualmie's water system is chlorinated and then tested for safety. Your forecast in the lowlands, spotty showers.
What's your message? Typical New York Times fake stories. Now, I don't know what about this story could be incorrect, but I do know that we know there are a lot of things missing. The bulk of the story has been confirmed by Fox News and CBS and CNN, all of the major networks. They're all confirming this story is out there and this storyline exists. But here's what we don't know. We don't know exactly how serious the president was when he had this conversation about firing Robert Mueller. Was this a conversation that says, you know what, I think we should fire Robert Mueller. Look at these conflicts. You're going to have to fire him. And then Donald McGahn says, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll sooner quit than do that. And you go, okay, move on. Was this part of a bigger conversation? Was this part of an ongoing conversation that took weeks and weeks and weeks, and there was a lot of back and forth and infighting? We just don't know. And I think that that is a part of the story that's important, because there will be some people who look at the story and say, oh, well, this proves obstruction of justice. No, it doesn't. It doesn't prove obstruction of justice. It doesn't prove anything nefarious at all. It doesn't negate that possibility, but what it also could potentially show you is that President Trump is a political novice, and he is. That is just a fact. He is not a politician. That was one of the appeals of then-candidate Trump, was that he's just a guy who is a successful business person, who cares about this country, has some ideas that he wants to share to help grow the economy, but he doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to the politics of it all, because he hasn't grown up in D.C. in these positions. He's not a congressperson. He's not a senator. He's not a former governor. He doesn't know what he's doing as it relates to the insider politics of it all. And that, to me, is what this suggests. But there's definitely no, at all, evidence of any kind of obstruction of justice. In fact, more and more of the text that we're finally getting a chance to look at, suddenly the FBI and the Department of Justice have been able to recover these 50,000 or so text messages that went missing. A lot of this seems to suggest that there is some evidence to suggest he didn't do anything at all. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, these two former FBI officials, Peter Strzok, the former deputy counterintelligence official, Lisa Page, his mistress. When you look at some of these text messages, I think they're pretty damn interesting. Both of them are very much anti-Trump. There's no doubt about that based on the texts that they've sent each other. They were not fans of President Trump. They leaned in the direction, although not entirely, of Hillary Clinton. And in a text message that was sent in May, it seems to give some sort of indication to Strzok and Page, thinking that there's no evidence of collusion that they at least have seen at that point. Strzok wrote in one of these text messages, "You and I both know the odds are nothing." This is Strzok. "If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern that there's no big there there." He was talking about the Mueller investigation. Now, he made that comment in May. The Mueller investigation only started 2 days earlier than that text message was sent. And so I think that there's some context to that, right? I mean, it's certainly possible that the Mueller investigation went underway and there was a there, and they found some more information. But as of that point, and by the way, remember, Peter Strzok was looking into this since July, right? So he had some time where he could have come back and said, oh, well, no, never mind. But that text, at least early on, indicates to him that probably given the opportunity to start this investigation, he wouldn't have done it the way that Mueller did because he didn't see any there. At the exact same time, since we're getting into some of these text messages, earlier text messages show that he didn't want to go too hard looking into the Hillary Clinton scandal. This was a text message from Lisa Page. She, speaking of Hillary Clinton, she might be our next president. The last thing you need us going in there loaded for bear. You think she's going to remember or care that it was more DOJ than FBI? Meaning if you do this, there's going to be some hell to pay. She is going to retaliate against you. Strzok responded, agreed. I called Bill and relayed what we discussed. He agrees. I will email you, and then there's a redacted name saying. So there was some general concern as to whether or not they would go after Hillary Clinton as hard as they probably should have because she might retaliate against them. She might think that they were responsible for this. I think that's interesting, and I don't think it's getting all that much coverage from the mainstream media right now. Find out what else is trending as we take a look at the big movie review of the weekend.
What's trending at the movies?
It's Friday, you know what that means. We talk movies. We come finally to the third and final film in the Maze Runner trilogy, and it absolutely delivers. Dylan O'Brien plays Thomas. He helped orchestrate an escape of a deadly maze in the first Maze Runner, which was a film about a social experiment. Then in Maze Runner Scorched Trials, the second one, he helped his friends survive zombies as the virus that nearly killed all human beings is getting ready to overtake the entire planet. Now, in the Maze Runner The Death Cure, Thomas takes on a mission of finding a cure for the deadly disease.
They took you because you're immune to a plague that's wiping out the human race. They think you're worth sacrificing to find a cure.
We'll never stop until we can stop them.
The last city, Wicked's home base of operations. It's the Lions standard model.
That's where we're going. 3 years we sat behind walls, trying to break out. Now we're trying to break back in. I get shook up.
This is a very good ending to the Maze Runner series. The film races by because of the action sequences, including a really strong opening scene where the crew ends up hijacking a speeding train. And it also doesn't give up on the moral questions it ends up raising in the first film, and I think that that's one of the more intriguing aspects of the storyline. Now, these kids in this movie, they're being chased by a corporation because they're immune to the disease that's wiping out all of mankind. So what the corporation ends up doing is torturing them, extracting their blood, and they're doing that as a means to find a cure. So this moral question that lingers after every single issue involving the corporation going after the kids is, should you sacrifice these few lucky immune kids for the good of the world's population? And the answer is not as clear-cut as maybe we'd like to think. But still, this is not a story about morals. This isn't a story about ethics. This is a story based on a young adult action-adventure book. And it's fun. It's well made. It's entertaining as hell. I highly recommend you check out the first two. This is not a standalone film. It is okay if you watch it without having seen the first two, but just rent the first two and go into it expecting a really good ending to the series. Maze Runner The Death Cure. It's rated PG-13. It's out now, and I recommend it. Right now, I also recommend you get to work on time, which is why we're giving you some help. Here's Right Way Traffic.
Good morning. Federal Way drivers continue to feel the effects of a collision westbound 18 near that I-5 interchange. If you're leaving Renton, heading into Bellevue, it's going to take you about 40 minutes this morning. Linwood to Seattle, a 30-minute travel time. This report brought to you by Compassion International. Becoming a child sponsor with Compassion International can change the world one child at a time. Find out how at compassion.com/radio. At AM 770 KTTH Traffic, I'm Emery Martin.
1 year into the presidency, our economy is booming. A GOP tax plan passed, a crushing blow to Obamacare, and a big, beautiful border wall. Join AM 770 KTTH for uninterrupted coverage of President Trump's State of the Union address, Tuesday, January 30th. Todd Herman previews the speech at 3, the president speaks at 6, and post-speech analysis with Jason Rance the following morning at 6. It's the State of the Union with President Trump.
God bless the United States.
On AM 770 KTTH, conservative talk radio.
Bickford Ford has done it again. According to new truck sales reports for 2017, Bickford Ford is the #1 Ford truck store in Washington State. At Bickford, we believe we're a little more than just a Ford store. Well, we're your neighbors. In fact, Bickford Ford has been part of the community since 1934, serving generations of Ford customers from Snohomish County and the entire Puget Sound. Our savings and consistently great service bring families back year after year. One example of great
Peasley Canyon, where the right lane is blocked with a collision, and eastbound 18, you're crowding from I-5 on out toward that scene as well. It's a big, shiny distraction. We're also seeing a lot of crowding on southbound I-5 still from the King-Snohomish County line to Northgate, and solid now from 85th down toward Mercer. Westbound I-90, very heavy across Mercer Island and through the Mount Baker Tunnel toward I-5. 520 starting to get heavier approaching 405, and as you make your way out toward Montlake, your drive times are looking like rush hour. It looks like Federal Way to downtown Seattle, 46 minutes real time, and Linwood to downtown Seattle on I-5, better than average. Looks like a 37-minute real-time commute. I'm Jill Diedrich, Cairo Radio, real-time traffic.
Traffic brought to you by Michael's Toyota, Volkswagen, and Subaru of Bellevue. 3 amazing brands, 1 local family, all at a single, easy-to-reach location right off I-90 at Eastgate. 816. Dave Ross with Colleen O'Brien. By now, you've certainly seen the Larry Nassar story and the abuse that was going on at USA Gymnastics. Jessica O'Byrne has covered this for a long time. How far back does... I was looking at your podcast, and back in, like, hundreds of episodes ago, you were talking about this.
Yeah, our very first episode in 2013 or 2012 with Tim Daggett, who's an NBC commentator, he talked about the need for USA Gymnastics to be a kinder, gentler place. And he wouldn't go into it more, but that's speaking to the abuse that we're seeing now.
You talk about the 80s now as the dark ages, so it goes back that far. How did this start?
You know, it started when gymnastics started to be very popular in the United States, and when people saw that you could train kids to be a medalist. World medalist was the first goal, and that's when really the abuse started. The very first stories go back to the 70s, and girls reporting abuse by their coaches and gym owners ignoring them.
And it sounds like these predators were able to do what they did because they had access to young girls. But why didn't anybody stop them? Why was it allowed to persist for this long?
You know, that's a good question. Some of the problem was, in the very beginning, was cultural, because even people that told their parents were shamed by their parents. We had to change the culture of victim blaming first. Secondly, there was always what USA Gymnastics hid behind was that they would be sued for ruining someone's reputation if they ever spoke about this or banned someone without an actual criminal record. And what we know is that it takes an incredible amount of grooming behavior and all kinds of red flags to happen before you actually get to the criminal threshold. And the criminal threshold is very hard to reach. As you see, it's also hard for women to be believed. When we see this happening with Nassar, he was reported to police at least twice before finally this all came out publicly. And that's why you have to have policies in place that identify grooming behavior, and that you can fire someone and even ban them from coaching when these red flags occur.
What did he tell the girls that made them keep quiet, or that made them think, well, this must be the way it is?
You have to understand what kind of people these are. So these are really highly competitive type A personality people who want to succeed almost at any cost. And this is not to blame them. This is to tell you that this is why this happened in many sports and not just gymnastics. His victims were soccer players, rowers, track athletes, dancers, and this type A personality are more susceptible to this kind of thing because they want to do whatever it takes to get them to their goal. And it's not so much what he said, it's how he set up the situation. So USA Gymnastics and many of the coaches, especially we've seen Geddert's gym where Nasser worked for years. Geddert was the bad guy. He was mean. He was an abusive coach, even physically abusive. And Nasser was the good guy. He was the guy who would listen to your complaints about Geddert. He was the guy that you could go to, or in the elite system, about Marta Karolyi, and he would agree with you that she was terrible. And he was the person who was the good guy, even giving treats. He was the person that would come into your cabin if there was a snake or a bug in there and get rid of it for you. Like, he was the trusted person, and that is why it wasn't so much about keeping quiet. It was, well, this person really has my best interest at heart. He would never do something that was inappropriate.
There's a lot of confusion, and also these girls and these women shouldn't have to give up their professional careers because the threshold for believing them was set so high. And I'd like to believe that, especially in the last 6 months since the Harvey Weinstein thing came out, that it is no longer a serious threat for many women that they'll lose their jobs or careers or professional careers as athletes by reporting some of this. Do you think the tide has turned because of the Weinstein stuff, because of the Nasser case? Do you believe this is the upswing now?
Yeah, it is. I think that this is definitely, the Me Too movement has helped so much. You know, in the athlete community, it's a big deal to have the Olympic champions come out and talk about this. I mean, these are really the leaders, and you see someone like Aly Raisman who's really taken on this cause the way she took on becoming an Olympic champion. Also, it's public scrutiny about this. I mean, this has been going on for years and years. There's been stories about this by Scott Reed in the Orange County Register since the 80s about this kind of abuse, and people at USA Gymnastics knowing about it from coaches and not doing anything about it, and all of these problems. There was a book published by Joan Ryan, Little Girls in Pretty Boxes, that basically predicted this situation. She talked about on our show that she had allegations of sexual abuse, but she didn't have enough concrete evidence to publish it. I mean, that was in the 90s. Like, this whole scenario was inevitable, and it has been with coaches, but the public scrutiny and huge stars speaking out about it has made it so that there's more transparency, there's more eyes watching the sport and making sure that there's accountability, and that's what we have to make sure happens now.
How do you have to train to be an elite athlete? Both my girls went to gymnastics very briefly, and they came out as soon as it got serious because it's like being in the Army. And you mentioned that I believe this was a camp situation where they go out to a ranch or something. Is that the way you have to train?
The American system has a semi-centralized system. So they would go out to an Olympic training center that was actually the Karolyi's house. The Karolyis are the famed coaches of Nadia Comaneci. That in itself, huge conflict of interest, should never have happened. But there's no cell service there. It's so far from a hospital that they'd have to, if anyone was injured, they'd have to be helicoptered out. It's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's a perfect isolated place for something like this to happen. Parents weren't allowed there. Parents aren't allowed to talk to their kids during competitions, which is just, it's insane to me. But they were told, you know, if you don't abide by these rules, your kid can't be selected to the Olympic team. And they train 6 to 8 hours a day. It's a full-time job. And there aren't laws to protect these athletes. And then if you're in the elite system, if you make the national team, you can be invited to the national team training camps, which were at this ranch in Texas in the middle of nowhere where so much of this abuse happened. That ranch has now finally been closed.
Other people were told about Larry Nasser, about the abuse at USA Gymnastics, at the college where he was a doctor, but we're just starting to see some of the dominoes start to fall behind Larry Nasser. Do you think that there's going to be more? Is there going to be a major flushing of the people who run USA Gymnastics to really hit the reset button because of this egregious case?
Yes. It is so freaking disgusting to me that there have not been criminal charges in this case against people at USA Gymnastics and MSU. And the fact that people, and specifically the former president of USA Gymnastics, Steve Penny, Peter Vidmar, who was the chairman of the board at the time, who just disappeared to Australia all of a sudden on his Mormon mission when this happened and gave up his position. And MSU is the most egregious. USA Gymnastics has actually gotten rid of more people than MSU has. MSU has only fired one person, and that person was Nasser. They tried to fire Kathy Klegus, the coach who was told twice, all the way back to the 90s, 1997, about Nassar's abuse, and intimidated parents and gymnasts into not reporting him. She's a mandatory reporter. Didn't report this. There was psychologists at MSU who victims went to. They didn't report this. There's a line of people. The current athletic trainer for the gymnastics team had this abuse reported to her twice. Not only is she still employed there, she's still working with the gymnastics team. Can you imagine the women on the team who have been through this and have come forward and they have to look at that woman every day? It makes me so angry.
Jessica O'Byrne, the host of Gymcastic podcast that you can download. She's got like 250 episodes of this, and as she said from the beginning, she knew that something was rotten. Traffic now brought to you by Emerald Queen Casino, and here's Jill Diedrich.
The South Sound is our trouble area this morning. Pack Highway East is still closed between Alexander Avenue and 38th. This is because of a fire. They're working on clearing up that road for you. Northbound 5 at 56. We have a collision in the collector distributor lanes. Injuries involved, and now 8 vehicles on the scene blocking the right lane of the main line. Traffic is quickly building from 72nd up toward that scene. Westbound 18 at Peaslee Canyon. A crash in the right lane has traffic solid out of downtown Auburn all the way up to the scene of that collision, and heavy traffic continues on westbound I-90 from about Bellevue Way now all the way out to I-5, and a lot of crowding now westbound 520 from the midspan of the bridge out to the I-5 interchange. Both floating bridges right now holding at about 30 minutes, and we're looking at a lot of crowding either direction of I-5 into and through downtown Seattle, and both directions of 405 into and through downtown Bellevue. Drive time right now from Issaquah into downtown Bellevue is about 20 minutes. Everett to downtown Seattle, we're looking at a 50-minute real-time commute. Cairo Radio, real-time traffic. I'm Jill Diedrich.
Traffic brought to you by Emerald Queen Casino, welcoming Ann Wilson and Hart, February 9th. Rock and roll pioneer and Hall of Fame legend Ann Wilson of Hart, only at the Emerald Queen Casino, the entertainment capital of the Northwest. 40 at the Carter Subaru Studios. Up next, a Seattle sports star begins a campaign for elected office.
Was I funnier when I was younger?
The Ron and Don Show.
Are you feeling unfunny? The dad jokes have been coming to me.
Oh.
That almost seemed funny to me.
Oh.
Which makes me think that maybe I'm losing my sense of humor.
Oh, I still got it over in this show.
Jury's out on that.
Oh.
The Ron and Don Show.
Every day on your drive home, 3 to 7 on Cairo Radio, 97.3 FM.
On demand on the Cairo Radio app.
When it's time to find new software for your business, you could spend hours searching for a solution online or fill out a contact form and just hope for the best. But sometimes to get a real answer, you've got to talk to a real person. And that's
companies to throw a load more money at the U.S. economy.
There you go. Day 2 of Davos ends today. For all the latest developments on the trip, check out foxnews.com. I've been talking with Simon Owen, Fox News Radio. Simon, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks a lot.
You're listening to The Jason Ranch on AM 770 KTTH and 94.5 FM of the Greater East Side. Want to join the conversation? Send me a tweet. Twitter.com/Jason Rants.
1 year into the presidency, our